Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Shop Talk. So our next speaker is a keynote speaker. Ooh, and there's her introduction. Hold on a minute. There we go. She is Ruth Wasserman, who is head of design at made.com. Ruth has a very distinguished career. She was previously design director at Urquell, where she was responsible for selling into a number of high street names, including John Lewis, The White Company, the Conran Shop, and Heels. And she joined Made 3 years ago, and she's going to tell us a bit about knowing your customer. Over to you, Ruth.
Great. Thanks very much. Okay, so thanks very much for joining me today. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how Made.com tries to understand who our customer is and how we create products that we hope that they'll want to buy. Okay, so I have a background in furniture design, which is actually quite unusual for somebody in my position who's covering a broad range of homewares, because typically people come from a kind of textiles or pattern design background. But I come from a furniture background and have been selling into the UK high street now for about 15 years. What I do when I'm working for a supplier into the high street is I find ways to communicate a vision using images and using words to try and tell a story that is inspiring and makes those people want to buy into what we're trying to sell. And I suppose in joining Made, I've taken those skills and I try to use them to create a vision internally that helps us to make products that our customers are going to want to buy. So Made started really like any other business, which is that 7 years ago it was a new creative business. And like most businesses, and if you have a small business, it started quite organically. So it's a process of having an idea, coming up with some products, and hoping that people are going to want to buy them. And that's really the first step in the process. And if you've made it that far that you've got a small collection of products that your customers want to buy into, then that's the first step. And that's really a little bit down to luck. You've got there, what's next? How do you understand then why people have bought into what you've got to offer, and you take the next step to developing that? So I joined Made 3.5 years ago, and the business was at a turning point. So having been this founder-led business, which had a great product range, a great brand, and a great and interesting way of selling, the question was, how do we prepare that for the future? How do we communicate, find a way to formalize the communication and create something which goes from being a very intuitive thing that's led and run by founders to something which can be led and run by a very fast-growing team. So as an example, there were probably, 50 people at Made 3.5 years ago when I joined. We're now a business of 250 people. We have offices in 3 countries. We had a design team of 1, I think, when I joined. We've now got 6 people in our design team. We have 40 people in our product team. And as you can imagine, when you go from that very small team to a team of 40, you have to start finding ways to describe who you are, to lay out the boundaries so that every new person that's coming in to join the team really understands who you are, what you stand for, so that they're helping to develop the right products and that they don't go off track, and that you maintain this interest that your initial customers have found so compelling and have emotionally connected with and resonated with. So that's the job at hand. We're very lucky in a business like ours that we've been able to do some marketing work and get some insight. But I think some of the things that we've learned to do are equally as applicable if you're a small business and trying to lay out the boundaries only for yourself or for a very small team. So what the marketing insight told us was that there are 4 things that we know about our customer. The first thing is that our customer is urban. And that's partly by design, because in the end, you've probably seen, we advertise quite heavily on the tube in London. So obviously the people who are going to buy our products are in London in the first place. But what that means is that we're able to consider our customers in terms of their lifestyles. So we know what urban dwellers are about. We know that London is a generation of renters. We know that people therefore maybe don't want to spend so much money on their products, or they want products that can migrate with them, or that they're living in small spaces, or maybe just that they don't have that much money to spend on furniture and would rather buy a new cushion every year just to spruce up their life. So those are some things that have given us an insight. The other thing that we know is that our customer is gender neutral. So we are a design-led brand, and I'm not sure whether that is why we're gender neutral, but typically a customer of a homewares brand is heavily weighted towards female, and Made.com has a much more gender neutral customer than that. I think, we're offering products that are design-led rather than fashion-led, and I guess we communicate ourselves in a way that appeals to a slightly different customer demographic in that way. The third thing is that our customers are confident decorators, and that probably doesn't come as a surprise, but we're selling to people who know their own style and who are able to mix and match products to create their own thing. And I guess, it's a bit of a cliche, but we like to say that we are catering to 1 million customers of one rather than one particular customer. That brings us on to the idea of eclectic. So along with being a confident decorator, our customers have eclectic tastes. We have lots of different things in our collection, and although as a brand we like to think of ourselves as modern and with a modern outlook, let's say, and design-led, we have lots of products that are actually quite classic in our collection. And with so many disparate products, it actually becomes quite hard to say, what do we stand for as a brand? What does that mean? And particularly with the idea of eclectic, it's very broad, and it's very difficult because all of these values are great. They tell us about our customer, but they don't tell us what our product looks like. And that's where, from a design perspective, when I joined, it was really important to say, how do we lay the boundaries for the team and how do we communicate that? So we undertook a job of establishing what the DNA of our product is. And although, as I say, we have a very eclectic product range and we have come up with 5 design styles, which I'll talk you through in a little bit more detail, I think some of the work we did can be really useful for small businesses, particularly if you only have one aesthetic. I think, in fact, if you have a small and growing business, it's really important to pin down your one aesthetic or your kind of single messages that you're telling to your customer, because it really helps to give clarity about who you are. I think for us, we found that being eclectic actually makes it very difficult to still communicate that idea of modernity. And it's much easier if you have a very singular message in terms of your style and your brand and product identity. So we decided that we had 5 design styles. We looked at the products that we had and we said, well, what do they look like? Some of them are very easy. So we have modern or modern European. It's a style that people were buying into in a big way from us. It's about kind of modern Italian style. It's streamlined, it's elegant, it's quite grown up. The great thing for us is that we were offering great prices, so people were buying into something with a very designer look at a great price point. The next modern look that we have is Nordic, and that's something that is more emerging. It's, there's so many amazing Scandinavian brands now, and there's quite a particular aesthetic. So where our modern look is quite grown up and elegant, the Nordic look is a bit more fun, a bit more youthful, maybe a bit more family-focused, hard-working, everyday products. These are some of the ways that we describe these different design styles. And then we have 3 other styles. So one of the things that we said when we laid out what we were doing, we said, okay, we're a brand with a modern outlook. We've got lots of styles, but let's say we'd like 70% of what we do to be modern and Nordic, and it means the other things can be an accent, and they're the things that people are picking from. You know, you can have a blank canvas of some great modern furniture and incorporate some global, some industrial looks to really create your own style, so that everybody who buys from us is able to kind of cherry pick the looks and make their own style. So we have Revival, for example. It's the kind of retro look that everybody's buying into. We have Industrial, which I guess speaks for itself. It's, it really responds to that urban customer, and it's casual. It sits in your amazing city loft that you've got in London if you have that space. And then we have Traditional. Traditional has always been the most difficult one for us because as I've said a few times, we're a modern brand. Our brand identity is modern. It's about bringing a modern look to customers. And so one of the really challenging things was to think about how we incorporate that traditional look into a modern brand. And that's where the job of trying to define for somebody external really comes into play. Because you can buy a traditional sofa in a grey linen and it looks very, very traditional. And for us, we had to stand back and question, why is that right for us? What makes that made? And so we've done quite a lot of work on defining exactly what that means. So we've said, well, I'll move on to my next slide because it goes on to say a little bit about that traditional look. So we've said where we have traditional products, it may be well-used traditional archetypes, but in order to make it right for made, it has to have a modern outlook with unexpected details. That means that we're saying we're bold, we're not pretty. We've got bold pattern, we've got bold colour. So if you come to Made and find a classic-looking sofa or a classic-looking dining chair, it's not going to be something very traditional that you might find at another retailer. It's going to have something which makes it recognisably made. And I think the idea of recognisably made is something that's particularly important. So coming back to the idea of knowing your customer, this is very intuitive. It's not based on market research. What it is based on is taking a good look at those early products that are selling well and trying to define why it is that we think they're right for our brand. And that comes down to a few things. One is your unique selling point. And I know that it's a classic marketing thing that people talk about, but you have to ask yourself when you're thinking about the products that you sell, what is different about what I'm doing to what other people are doing? So with our traditional products, we think, what is different about those products to the products that we can find elsewhere on the market? Why do people want to come to us to buy this product rather than someone else? And for us, it's because we've given it a different treatment. We've been a bit bold, we've been a bit daring in a way that some other people might not. So I think if you're thinking about your own products, it's really about saying what is unique about this, what makes it recognizably me rather than somebody else. The next thing that we try to define is the must-haves. So what is it that every product you have must have in it? For us, we say it must have design content because we like to think of ourselves as a design brand. So every product we have must have some design content, and it must have something interesting about it. It must have the extra 10% that we don't think other people do. So that's unique selling points, what is unique, and what must every product have. And then we also use the sometimes, always. So the must-haves are the always, and the sometimes are things like, sometimes we like to surprise our customers by making daring and unexpected products. That's something that we know defines us. And I think we don't want to do that all the time. Sometimes that daring and unexpected comes in the photography. So sometimes, for example, when the business first launched, I think their first campaign advert was a naked woman on a sofa. Well, that's about the daring and unexpected. You can question the taste level, but that's the sometimes. We're not doing that always. We don't want every single photo we have to have a naked woman sitting on it, but they're the sometimes elements of what we do that give our brand its identity as somebody who's willing to push the boundaries or occasionally be interesting or unexpected. So I think that's a really interesting thing to think. What's unique? What must it have? And what do we sometimes do that sets us apart? So one of the ways that we use this, as well as in trying to define our whole product range for newcomers into the business. So for example, if we have a new person in the buying team or the design team, it's very important for them to understand our design styles, understand the boundaries of the product. The other thing is that as a fast-growing business, we're always launching new categories, and I'm very grateful that we have 2 of our new category buyers in the audience. Thanks. And when we come up with a new category, we create a document which is a category vision, and really what that document is it's an extension of our design styles, and it basically says, what do we stand for? So we have our core design styles, they work across all of our products, but for new categories, we need to really define what do we stand for when it comes to that category? So if we take, for example, giftware, we're saying we know what MADE stands for. We know that we're design-led. We know that we have a youthful outlook. We know we're urban. And we know we do things in an unexpected way. And how does that translate when we're doing a new category such as giftware? So again, we think about those three characteristics, the unique selling point, what makes gifts for MADE unique. So it's easy to think about it for the whole selection. When we're doing a new category, it's important for us to think what is unique about gifts for MADE. We have to think about what we must have. So for example, we've said we're selling online. How do we make sure that people understand which of our products are going to be suitable for gifts? Well, we've decided that it has to have gift packaging and that we have to photograph it with its gift packaging so that when people are buying it online, they understand that they can get it as a gift. And we have to take that different approach because we're not in a shop, we're selling online. And again, the sometimes, always. So, you know, the daring is really exciting for gifts. That might be an always rather than a sometimes when it comes to gifts. We know that it's a core part of our DNA, but we have to think about how it translates for a new category. And again, for us, launching a new category can be very similar to when you're deciding to launch a new business, because for us, it's about communicating to quite a wide business what we stand for. It's about convincing the board. It's about convincing people who aren't working in product. It's about convincing the web team so that they feel really engaged with the product and are really able to buy into it. But when you have a business, it's about understanding for yourself what you stand for, and also then being able to convince your customers, whether it's a retail customer or an end user. It's about convincing the person who's designing your website for you so that they really, really understand what you stand for as a brand, and they're best placed to translate that for you to your end user. So I have a few little questions here that I think it's useful to try and ask yourself when you're trying to define for yourself what your business means. I think it's useful to ask, why do I think people want this? Why are people buying it? And you know, you can actually ask your customers that. I know there's just been a talk on social media, and social media is an amazing tool for being able to talk to your customers. Seeing where people are hashtagging your products, seeing the houses or the people that are wearing it or how they're dressed. It's an amazing tool. We have a platform called Unboxed that we launched probably 2 or 3 years ago now, and it's where people can upload our products in their homes onto this kind of social site. People can talk to each other, but for us it's an amazing tool because we can see straight into our customers' homes. But things like Instagram are amazing for that. So if you really harness hashtags, you'll really find out why do people want this product. It's important to understand what makes it different to other people's. So I think that's less about knowing your customer, but more about knowing everything else, so that when you're talking to your customers, you can say, you need this product because you can't get it anywhere else for this reason. So it's just about knowing why it's different. And then again, the must-haves, what quality must it have? I think, as I said, creating these visions, if you're working on your own or with a small business, sometimes it feels like a lot of work and it feels like quite difficult to get down to the answers, particularly when it's in here and so personal to you. But being able to write it down and lay it down in images and words is helpful for yourself, because as you grow your business from a small range of products to a bigger range of products, it really helps you to understand where to go, how to develop your collection. And likewise, it really helps to inspire and communicate to all the people around you, because although you may be a small business, there are so many people, not just your customers, but your suppliers and everyone who's working with you. And if they all understand your vision, then it's going to make sure that that vision is communicated and executed in the way that you want it to be. Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. We might have time for a few questions. Does anyone have a question?
Hi, I would like to know how you originally came to the results about your audience. Like you were saying, it's urban and all this. How did you initially get your your results?
So it's quite interesting because about 18 months ago we did a piece of work which was just to get a marketing agency and basically to do that, and we paid them to do it. But before having done that, we had already laid out quite a few documents about what we thought we were, and really that intuition that we'd laid out tallied very closely with the things that we got from the results of the marketing. So although we're fortunate that we're the size of business that we can pay for that kind of marketing, it was quite reassuring to know that our intuition about our business was pretty spot on. So, in that way, I think it's reassuring for people who don't have the resources to use that marketing to really just think about who they think their customers are.
Oh, sorry, there's one over there. Here you go.
Hi there. When you go about designing a product from scratch, do you take into consideration the cost and the feasibility of the construction of it, or do you kind of come up with the idea and then worry about the how later?
We absolutely have to think about the feasibility beforehand, because we were just talking earlier, we launch 2,000 products every year, and as the company's grown, we've had to become a lot more strategic about it. So we spend a lot of time doing our planning and strategy. So every time we set a design brief, we have quite a clear idea of the materials and the kind of style and look that we're going for. So already in our mind, we'll have an idea of what supplier we're going to use, because we have been burned in the past. While I've been with the business, we've briefed things into external designers who have come back with amazing designs, and we've gone through a torturous process over months of trying to get it produced, and in the end found out that we couldn't. So that's not great for the designers or for us. So it's just really important to have the planning in place, I think.
With launching so many different products, how long do you give something that maybe isn't selling as well before you kind of lay it to rest?
It's brutal. We're online, so we're very fortunate that we can launch loads of products because we're not constrained in the way that you would be with a shop. We know how long it takes to see really whether something's going to get traction. So we place the first order, we put it on for sale, and within 4 weeks we have a clear idea of whether we think it's going to work or not. And that's after 12 months of development or something, so it's really quite brutal.
Wow. I think that might be it. Ruth, thank you very, very much. That was really fascinating. Thank you for being with us. And please give her a great round of applause.
Thank you very much.